What is up, guys? Rick Kakis here, and this is the Nightfall Gold Tier Guide, showcasing not only how to beat this week's Nightfall from February 14th, Valentine's Day, to February 21st, but also some tips for how to achieve that Gold Tier ranking to complete the Sunrise Bounty from Zavala, and hopefully get a crack at the Icebreaker Exotic Sniper Rifle. So, let's get started. The first thing we need to go over is, of course, this week's Nightfall Modifiers. And actually, the current Nightfall Modifiers make this Nightfall pretty easy for both completing and for getting the Gold Tier rating. So that means that if you're a newer player, and I understand that that's probably most people who watch these Nightfall guides, newer players that, don't really have a huge asset of teammates to go and do it with, this is going to be a great time to do it. Again, if you are a newer player, if you've never done the Nightfall before, you may want to take a crack at this week's Nightfall because the modifiers are pretty favorable for just an easy experience overall. And they are, firstly, small arms. Small arms is going to make your primary weapon deal significantly more damage. Essentially, it's double damage. And this means that is probably the biggest factor in how to choose your loadout. That's the most important part of your loadout when going into this week's Nightfall. So choose a good primary weapon. I'm using the Bad Juju Exotic Pulse Rifle. Absolutely fantastic gun. Fully automatic, very easy to use pulse rifle. Reloads every time you get a kill, and every kill you get, it substantially charges your super. Anything even akin to that, any other exotic primary weapons, even something like the Monte Carlo, is all going to be fantastic in this Nightfall. Use your best primary that you have access to. The next modifier is Fresh Troops. This modifier is the reason it's easier to get the Gold Tier rating. Fresh Troops just makes more enemies spawn than normal, which is great when killing enemies gives you points. There's going to be more enemies than normal. You're going to have more chances for insane, double kills, triple kills, big rocket attacks, big supers, all of that stuff, and you're just going to be getting way more points than you normally would. So that's actually pretty good. Keep in mind that you will have to fight more guys, and the normal guys that's spawning, there's going to be more than usual, so you can get ambushed if you're not paying attention. But generally, Fresh Troops, now with the whole scoring system, is probably more of a positive modifier than a negative modifier. The one actually bigger negative modifier is Match Game. This makes it so that normally when you're shooting an enemy shield, that is, let's say, arc, and you're shooting it with a solar weapon, it's going to do a certain amount of damage. Match Game makes it do a lot less damage. So this means that you're going to want to construct your build so that you have access to all of the different elemental varieties. For me, I'm using the Night Stalker Hunter. That's going to give me access to void damage through the abilities. Then I have a Solar Fusion Rifle as my secondary, and then lastly I have an Arc Heavy Machine Gun. And so I have all of the elements covered. This is also what you want to achieve with your build. Lastly, we have Airborne, meaning that you deal more damage as long as you're in the air. As for an exotic armor piece, it's really up to you. I'm using the Grasps to get another melee charge, and melee damage does have the chance to completely reload my primary weapon, which is some synergy with small arms. So that's it for the modifiers. Let's move on to the complete Nightfall walkthrough. It is the Shield Brothers strike. And Shield Brothers, as long as it's not solar burn, is not that bad of a strike. You're going to start it here in an open patrol area. Keep in mind that if you're at all concerned about getting enough points, you can farm enemies for a little bit in this open area. However, again, with Fresh Troops, it's really not worth it. Around 60,000 points is going to get you the Gold Tier, and you should get that naturally just by doing this strike. Moving inside the Cabal ship, however, you're going to encounter, you're going to have your first real encounter. There's a lot of Taken throughout this entire Nightfall. Now, you can sometimes encounter Taken, sometimes Cabal, randomly throughout the different encounters when you're doing the normal strike, but for this Nightfall, almost every encounter is going to be filled with Taken, so just be aware of that. You're not going to be fighting as many solar shields as you may expect, so make sure again to have those other modifiers covered. After slaughtering your way through some taken enemies, you're going to encounter the Cabal tank. This tank is relatively easy to take down, especially with your primary. Remember that if you're using, there's kind of two different ways you can use a primary. You can use a very accurate long-range primary like a scout rifle. Basically, it's like a sniper rifle now with small arms, or you can use a closer range fully automatic pulse rifle like I'm using here with the Bad Juju, or an auto rifle. And if you go the alternative route with the fully automatic primary, that's going to let you hold down the trigger, as you'll see me doing throughout the gameplay in the background, and just constantly jump. So you aim at the enemy, hold the trigger, and then just keep jumping. That's going to give you the small arms bonus and the airborne bonus, and it's going to deal massive damage. If you can get this going and do this properly, you can take down this Goliath tank and the actual bosses very, very quickly with just your primary weapon. In any event, in the tank encounter, the one main piece of advice I have for you guys is don't get too distracted by the tank. There's going to be large groups of enemies that spawn pretty close to where you are. There isn't a whole lot of distance between where they spawn and where you can be. So a lot of people get distracted by the tank. They get, scoped in. They're looking at it, trying to avoid its shots, and they don't notice the, 5, 6, or 7 now with fresh troops, Cabal guys right behind them, and it can get you killed. So make sure to kind of clear the area of ads all the time. Don't get sucked into just going and trying to kill that tank. Aside from that, this encounter is pretty straightforward. Don't forget, however, that there is potentially heavy ammo that spawns kind of in the background, and a lot of people forget about this. They just keep going with the strike, but free heavy ammo is free heavy ammo. Why not? Moving on, however, you have I think the scientific term is a crap ton of taken enemies guarding the entrance to the hallway, continuing you on this strike. This is a great opportunity to get some super kills or just a ton of points using supers. You'll see us use tethers and so on, so make sure to make the most of this opportunity. Just so many enemies spawn in a tight bundle, it's definitely a great place to farm some points. Moving on, however, you're going to continue through the ship and end up in another large encounter. This time, I know it's kind of a weird sight, I'm sure for a lot of you, it's the Taken instead of the Cabal. So just mow them down and continue on your way. It should be noted, however, that there is a yellow health Taken boss kind of in the background there. It's usually a wizard, so don't get too aggressive or you could get melted without paying attention to where that boss is. They do a lot of damage. Now, right after that, you're going to move forward a little bit more and you're going to enter the final boss arena. You're going to have to scan a bomb with your ghost, and that's going to trigger both of the bosses to spawn. Now, just a quick rundown of the mechanics in this fight. One boss is going to spawn at first. It's going to be the melee focus boss. He is not going to shoot you whatsoever. He's just going to run at you and use his jetpack to have a slamming attack at you as well. So just avoid him by jumping around, generally just keeping him in sight and in mind and not letting him sneak up on you. If he does hit you, it will do a massive amount of damage. You really want to avoid it. On top of that, enemies are going to be spawning. Thankfully, it says reinforcements inbound every time ads are spawning. Really pay attention to this. It's very easy in this extremely open arena with almost no cover to get overwhelmed by the ads. If you let your health get too low, you'll often find yourself in a scenario in this boss fight where there's nothing you can do. There's no cover, the ads spawn on all sides, and you're just going to die. The way to avoid this is to be on top of the ads. It's small arms, so you can just melt the crap out of all of the ads spawning from these doorways. Just make sure you take it upon yourself or you designate a teammate or two to do this to kill the ads when they spawn. After the melee focus boss, there's going to be a ranged focus boss. He's only going to shoot these siege cannon shots at you and he's not going to melee you whatsoever except for when he jumps. He's going to do an area of effect blast when he lands. After you hurt him enough and he retreats as well, both of the bosses are going to spawn at once and then you finish them both off and then you finish this Nightfall. It should be noted, however, just one last thing, whatever boss you kill first, the other boss kind of absorbs their powers and becomes like a mega boss for the last little bit of the fight, but it should be no problem. The main kind of trouble, the main issue within this boss fight is, again, the ads. A lot of people, again, they get sucked in on those bosses, they try to do as much damage as possible, and they're not paying attention to the ads, or they're paying too much attention to the ads, and they don't realize that, you know, Nuggets McFuggets in the background with his flaming hammer is coming down and punching you to absolute smithereens. So you're gonna want to watch out for that guy as well. The key is to focus on both. Shoot some ads, but then look around for the bosses, see where they are, go back to ads, and vice versa. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, and you'll see me do it a lot in this boss fight, if you can have a fully automatic primary, hold the trigger and keep jumping, you can absolutely crush with your damage output. And that's going to let you use a primary to deal with the ads and to deal with the boss. I basically used the bad juju for this entire Nightfall. Like, I basically didn't touch my secondary and my heavy. And that shows you just how good these modifiers are when you're using a powerful primary weapon. And so guys, that's going to conclude this week's Nightfall Gold tier guide. A pretty straightforward and, if you don't mind me saying, easy Nightfall to get gold tier rating and just to complete. A great opportunity for newer players to jump into the Nightfall and hopefully get some good gear. Remember, there's a ton of looking for group or LFG sites up and running with people looking for Nightfalls. DestinyLFG.com and DestinyLFG.net are great resources if you need a team to help you do this. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. Now, if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny content similar to this and don't want to miss out on next week's Gold Tier Nightfall guide, be sure to slap that subscribe button. And if you actually want to be notified of new uploads, be sure to press the bell beside subscribe. Now, if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.